Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the 8th round of Season 3 of Monday Night Racing presented by Tufco Flooring, the Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge at iRacing's Virtual Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. Welcome to the Monday Night Racing pre-race show. I'm your host, Taylor Burns. Joining me is my partner in crime, Justin Prince, and our wonderful producer, Mr. Ryan Bauer. Justin, we are taking a glimpse into the future, as now we are taking the next-gen cars and putting them on the Virtual Road America, which we will see the actual NASCAR series taking part of this weekend here. And we get to see how this car manages on the road course at the hallowed grounds here at Road America.
And it's not going to be an easy race, to say the very least, first of all, Taylor, as this is a track that is very big, but provides many of good passing zones, but hard braking zones. And at the same time, with this next-gen car, it brings challenges of drivers trying to adapt to it, try and learn from it, make sure they're ready to go for a race such as this tonight, to make sure they do not blow the corners, to make sure they don't lock up the brakes, to make sure they're very efficient in the corners. All that's going to be very important tonight, as it's a glimpse into the future, not just of this year, but potentially for future years.
It certainly is, Justin. Let's take a quick look at this new next-gen car. It's a phenomenally made new car that we just received on the iRacing service about a couple of months ago for all of us to enjoy. But this car, Justin, is unlike any of the NASCAR Cup cars that have been through the decades that we've seen before. And it provides a unique opportunity for the drivers here tonight to get a feel of what it's going to be like running here at this circuit when we come back with these next-gen cars.
5 gears, sequential gearbox, tough brakes to be able to slow down with this racetrack, difference in terms of handling, much different in terms of how it handles compared to the Generation 6 Cup cars. There's a lot of major differences that can pop up, and it in turn can bring different driving styles. For those who watched along for the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series at the Chicago Street Circuit, there's a reason it was so challenging for drivers to race at that circuit, because this car can provide many opportunities for drivers to lose grip at the back end coming off of corners. It's so easy to lock up the brakes and send your car flying off into the grass in the runoff areas. In turn, it brings so many challenges to make sure you properly make your way around this circuit with this type of a race car. It's going to be absolutely entertaining to see how these drivers adapt as the night goes on.
It certainly is, but with that, let's take an in-depth look at this beautiful circuit, Road America, right near Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. This 4-mile monster has been home to a wide variety of racing, from SCCA, IMSA, IndyCar, and many other amateur racing, to just recently the NASCAR Xfinity Series calls this place home, and then now, beginning this year in 2021, home to the NASCAR Cup Series, who will make their debut this week here at this beautiful circuit. This track provides a lot of intricate corners as well as high-speed sections for these 14 turns. It takes quite a while to get around this circuit anyways, no matter how you look at it, so you have to make sure that you take care of your equipment, and possibly we could see some fuel strategy, because you don't want to run out of fuel on this monster of a circuit.
In the real world in particular, there have been multiple cases where drivers, remember, have dramatically ran out of fuel when it comes to this racetrack. But keep in mind, the lap times tonight, 2 minutes 8 seconds at the top end, as low as 2 minutes and 22 seconds for some drivers in practice. So it's going to be intriguing how the pace is settled in and potential of traffic as time goes on with some of these lap times and the struggles.
It certainly is. And Justin, it is hard to believe, but we are closing into the playoffs. This is the 2 more races left. And looking at the point stand right now, Shane Van Gisbergen sits atop the point standings with his 4 wins that he has this season. And then, of course, you have Adam Cabot, Matt Stolnick, and Stephen Wilson, the only other drivers to win this season. But let's look a little further back towards the back half of the field, where we see Justin Melillo, DJ Cummings tied for 12th, Mark Rabillas, Ford Martin, and Steve Affont right there in striking distance if something were to happen for them tonight. As we see, the points is about 8-point gap difference for those 5 drivers.
It's going to be very critical as a result for drivers to make sure they stay on the racetrack with the closeness of tonight. But keep in mind, Garrett Smithley has prior commitments, so that's going to be something to factor on in for the final race as well for the point standings, and adds applied pressure for him as well. Drivers such as TJ Majors, I'm looking towards trying to improve for tonight. DJ Cummings looks very efficient around this racetrack so far. All those drivers are going to have some interesting moments here. And don't forget, that final race of the regular season, Chicagoland, with the NASCAR Xfinity Series cars, is going to be a hoot, to say the very least, Taylor.
It certainly is, but we have one race that we have to focus on right now, and that's this one here at Road America with the next gen car. But with that, we are now going to turn to our Bryant Shot Technologies in-race reporter, who's going to be our special guest for the pre-race show. It is going to be DJ Cummings. DJ, welcome up into the pre-race show. How do you feel about this circuit? And also, are you ready to master Road America here tonight with these next gen cars?
I'm feeling good. This is going to be a lot of fun. Once Ford came to me and was like, we're going to change the schedule up and do next gen, I was like, that should be pretty interesting. So I turned some laps by myself before started doing sessions, and I was thoroughly enjoying it. Felt like I was throwing some pretty good laps down, and then getting into some practice races with everybody, and even just now I'm feeling pretty good. I feel like the big key is going to be keeping it on the asphalt. You're going to have a lot of folks that are probably going to be a little aggressive and overdrive it, so I think you can at least guarantee yourself a top 10, top 15 if you keep it on the pavement tonight. But really looking forward to it. This should be a lot of fun.
It should be as a result, DJ, and you mentioned all the preparation coming into tonight for this race. How different is this car compared to any other you've raced on the iRacing service, especially the Gen 6 car, at a track like Road America, to be able to properly hit your marks and make your way around the circuit?
I mean, I'll compare it side by side to the Gen 6 car. I will say they nailed it pretty good when it comes to road courses. It makes a whole lot more of a difference. I compared them side by side on this course, and the next gens definitely are about 2-3 seconds faster, and it feels like you really have to get used to the brakes because they are a lot different compared to the Gen 6 car. Trying to feel like how much brake pressure you can use when backing it down into the corners, so it took a little while to get used to that, but once you get a feel for it and you get a feel for the steering and how much play there is into it, the next gen could be a really fun and entertaining car to drive, especially on the road courses. So that's definitely going to be a lot of fun and a pretty good challenge, since this is the first league race, or really official race, that I've done with the next gen car. So definitely looking forward to it.
As we look ahead and trying to see, your goal is, of course, trying to make it into that round of 13. How confident do you feel with taking on this circuit, about making sure that you make it into that top 13? Because after tonight, we only have one more race before we compete into playoffs.
Yeah, this is definitely points race for sure. I want to make sure I at least put myself in a good spot heading into Chicago next week. But as long as I can get together a good points night and put myself at least a couple more points above the cut line, well, preferably as many as I can away from the cut line, I feel like we will be in pretty good shape. But time will tell, and we'll soon find out.
We certainly will soon find out. Well, DJ, before we let you go, anyone you would like to give a thank you or shout out to?
Oh, first shout out to my wife, Addie, for letting me have all this fun. Being home all the time, and then big shout out to my boy Harris Lou Creative, for putting together this eNASCAR scheme. He's doing graphic design over at Stewart Haas, and they're doing a lot of good stuff over there, so check them out. And just big thanks to Ford for just putting on such a fun league. It's been a lot of fun over the past year to be racing with all these high-profile guys from the real world, from the sim world. It's really a blast.
Well, of course, we look forward to watching you race here tonight. That, of course, ladies and gentlemen, is our Bryant Shock Technology in-race reporter, DJ Cummings. And he's currently actually sitting right now 5th in the practice charts, Justin. As we take a quick look of how that's going on, Will Rogers sits atop of the leaderboard with Adam Cabot and, of course, newcomer Brad Perez as well. So keep an eye on Perez. He did compete here at Road America in the Spec Miata class last year in the SCCA runoff. So he may have something to go for when it comes to competing.
I'm really impressed once again by the speed of Will Rogers and Brad Perez, as those are two of my favorites for tonight's race, Taylor, because both of them are strong at road courses. They can contend in multiple different types of cars on road courses, and they're very consistent around their marks around the racetrack. But the biggest surprise on those boards was Adam Cabot, who is second. You can definitely tell he's put in a lot of work for this race as a result here, Taylor. And he's someone who might be able to play spoiler here possibly and show what he can do here tonight.
He certainly can, but he has to make sure he hits his mark on this circuit. Well, like you mentioned it with the Chicago Street Circuit with these next-gen cars, these cars are a little bit more harder to handle. And even though we're not using a H-pattern shifter, these sequential shifting packages that we have for these next-gen cars can be a little difficult if you do not hit your brake zones correctly. So these drivers are going to have to make sure they hit their braking zones right on cue. And for those who do have road racing experience with sequential shifters, might have the best opportunity to showcase their talents here tonight.
Absolutely, and it's going to really test as well some other drivers that are going to end up having to make their way through the field. Take, for example, a Dylan Welch or a Max Kennan or a Michael Massey. Those competitors, I think, are going to be really tested about their road course abilities as well as how they've learned how to drive with this car, because it can take a couple hours at the very minimum just to learn the basics of driving with this car. It takes a lot of skill to be able to then take it to the next level and be able to be race-winning pace.
It certainly is. Well, Justin, it's hard to believe, but we are about ready to have a glimpse into the future now as we get ready to watch the Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge here at Road America. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, James Pike and Kenneth Bueno, along with Justin Prince, will bring you all the stories and action here at the virtual Road America. I'm Taylor Burris and Justin Prince. This has been the Monday Night Racing presented by Tufco Flooring pre-race show.
There's a place where fire and flavor are celebrated, where grilling traditions and new techniques are perfected. Here in Big Green Egg Country, you can grill it, roast it, smoke it, or bake it. It's the most versatile grill you'll ever own. Simple to light, easy to use, comes with a free lifetime warranty. Have it delivered to your door by a certified dealer in your community and start enjoying the ultimate cooking experience. Shop online for home delivery at biggreenegg.com. That's biggreenegg.com.
When you want to be the best, you can't settle for the rest. There's a reason that Maconi Setup Shop is trusted by more virtual and real-world tracks and companies than any other setup shop in iRacing. With partners such as Stafford Motor Speedway, the Nashville Fairgrounds Speedway, Five Flag Speedway, Speed 51, and more. When you want something done right, you go to the experts at Maconi Setup Shop.
With setups available for most series on both asphalt and dirt, built by a team of professional builders consisting of some of the top talents on the service, Maconi Setup Shop LLC has what you need to hit the track with confidence. Head over to MaconiSetupShop.com and learn why Maconi Setup Shop is the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports and is partnered with some of the largest names in virtual and real racing.
And remember, at Maconi Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to Podium Esports coverage of the 8th round of Season 3 of Monday Night Racing, the Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge at iRacing's virtual Road America in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin. I'm James Bryant, the voice of Podium Esports, joined tonight by Kenneth Bueno, producer Ryan Bauer, pit reporter Justin Prince, and cameras, as always, provided this evening by Dougie Beard. And Kenneth, the Next Gen finally arrives on Monday Night Racing for the first time, but not necessarily where you would expect. That being said, it's a big week for Road America. The Cup Series heads there on Independence Day next Sunday for the first time ever, and I guess we're just getting in the spirit, I suppose, of going to race in one of the finest road courses in the Midwest, arguably one of the finest road courses in all of the United States.
I think, James, this is a perfect combo to bring a car and this track that's going to happen in real life this weekend. You can't really time it better enough. And the change from IndyCar, we were supposed to have an IndyCar race here, but then decided, let's bring the next gens here. Let's see how they can do on the road course. And this will be the first time that the Monday Night Racing competitors have a chance with these next gen cars in a competitive setting. So while we're going to see the changes with the car, maybe the changes with the track over time in this race, we're going to see the dynamicness of these drivers start to take place. And I figure it's going to be a lot of fun, especially with a lot of people here, part of the NASCAR world, and going to see the real next-gen cars this weekend.
There's a lot that changes with this next-gen car compared to the Gen 6, but the biggest thing so far as road racing is concerned, the transmission. We take the Tremec, I believe it is a 6-speed gearbox with that reverse gear that comes directly from the Australian supercars. It is the exact same model of gearbox that will be used in the next-gen cars that the Australian supercars already use. So a sequential shift here. And that changes how you're going to run a road course. No more H patterns that you have to worry about. You're just going blip, 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 or rather grab, 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 I suppose. But in either case, a little bit easier to shift, but that doesn't change the fact that getting around this place is very hard because there's not lots of runoff area.
And this track, James, over the course of history, this track has been known as a very wide regarded venue for being a very challenging track in any car you're bringing in. So even with the next gen improvements, it's still going to be a challenge. You take a look at the Google Earth images of Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, and the infamous Road America. This track, 14 turns, so many different types of corners. You have the hard braking zones, you have some of the intricate parts where you kind of have to slip the car around and try to dance it around each corner. Figure with these cars and how they're really optimized, probably for more so road course racing, it's probably going to make these drivers have a little bit of fun with this as well, given the challenges that they already have.
Plenty of places that you need to be aware of, corners that we will reference on more than a few occasions. We brought on board here with Max Kennedy, who makes his way through the Kettle Bottoms down towards turn 12. That's Canada Corner that he's approaching. As you see the braking markers approach on the left-hand side, he'll get down on the brakes, turn his way up through Canada Corner. Well, at least try to. Good slide through. There's Brad Perez running the old Mark Martin colors that the 60 machine used to run way back in the day, 2000 era. Gear wrench aboard the number 28 machine of Ron Capps. The NHRA funny car driver for Don Schumacher Racing is back in MNR tonight after a few weeks absence, but a lot of big names, big field, 30 cars that we've got here ready to go. Kenneth Bueno, and that's one of the larger fields we've had in a few weeks, so people getting a little bit excited for the arrival of the next gen machine into MNR as we get a look at what was the front end of David Schildhouse's Gamer Advantage Chevy Camaro.
I think in many ways, James, we're excited to see all these drivers come back. And one of the drivers we haven't seen in a while in Monday Night Racing, if you see that number 8 machine in P11 on the qualifying charts right now, Jeff Green returns to the series after a while where he has not been present in some of these races. So it's fantastic to see him back. I guess maybe the next gen and the Road America combo kind of lured him back in. But we're going to be excited to see him as you ride on board with Justin Malillo trying to take his qualifying laps. But James, although we're seeing a very big field, this is going to dramatically increase the amount of bumps that we may see in the point standings, because we have a very tight point standings in the top 13 going into tonight's race, and this is already the penultimate race of the regular season. So I figure for many drivers like Justin Malillo here, they want to keep themselves above the cutoff. For drivers underneath, they want to get over it and get over that hump, be a part of the playoffs, and not have to worry when Chicagoland and the Xfinity Series comes next week.
2 races to go until the playoffs begin, including tonight as we ride on board with Matt Stelnick out of Syracuse, New York, working for NASCAR, marketing communications. Also, I think we'd be remiss, and I know Justin would be agreed if I did not make clear that he is from Port Jefferson Station, New York, which is a little bit more specific than Long Island, but I know how particularly proud he is to be a New Yorker regardless. So make sure we hit that for Justin. Also note, Jeff Green is back, like you said, Kenneth, but another driver that I think we need to pay attention to, especially because he had tons of pace in practice. He was in the top 10 of the charts, but more importantly, this is home for him and a very big weekend for him. Josh Bilicki, who comes out of Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, which is not terribly far away from here. Only about an hour south towards the greater Milwaukee area. So we are very much in Josh Bilicki's backyard, and I suspect that you are going to hear from the 54 at some point this evening before all is said and done. Just watching the last 30 seconds of qualifying roll by before we get set to bring you the starting grid, tell you who wins the Beef Jerky Unlimited Pole Award and who's going to be starting up near the front of the field for this Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge at iRacing's Virtual Road America, penultimate race of the regular season for Monday Night Racing. It is time to bring you the grid now as qualifying is wrapped up, and as we turn to P1, our Beef Jerky Unlimited Pole Award goes to the 17 of Adam Cabot. The Magic Man from Glen Gardner, New Jersey, sets a time of 2 minutes and 7.828 seconds to take top spot on this grid over Gabe Wood, the 50 machine. Gabe was very fast in last night's practice race. He'll start second. Brad Perez, Will Rogers, no shockers to see two good friends, two pretty sharp drivers on road courses near the front of the pecking order. DJ Cummings, who won the practice race last night, and Anders Krohn in the third row.
Going to be some notes to be taken tonight from the 38 of Anthony Alfredo. He'll be running the real-life NASCAR Cup Series race at Road America this weekend. But Josh Bilicki, as you mentioned, this is the home race for him in the 54. He's going to be the outside of row number 4 with Gary Sexton and David Schuthouse, two prominently known people from Podium Esports and streamers as well. They'll line up row number 5 with James Bickford and returning driver Jeff Green in the top 12.
And yes, that is 2000 Xfinity Series champion Jeff Green that you were seeing on your screens. Ford Martin running the Fox Sports colors tonight. Bit of a paint scheme change for him, livery change, depending on how you look at it. But he starts the inside of row 7 alongside Ron Capps. Matt Stolnick, who won the season opener at Daytona, joined by Mike Clay, reporter for the NFL on ESPN in row 8. Row 9 belongs to TJ Majors and NASCAR Camping World Truck Series driver and Xfinity Series driver Robbie Lyons.
Kyle Busch Motorsports mechanic Maxwell Kennan will start from P19 with Garrett Miller in the 36 to his outside with Traction's GG's Justin Malillo in the 53 on the inside of row 11. Paul Sutton will be to his outside, and Joshua Slade, Drew Ucker, two drivers who also did not take time. Actually, everybody below 17 did not take a time through this race, so they'll have to start in the midfield of the field.
XR's Brandon Brown, Michael Massey in that 13th row, starting 25th and 26th. Media folks in row 14, Dental Welch of MRN and NBC Sports. He was a little bit busy with the 6 hours of Watkins Glen over the weekend. Noah Lewis there too on his outside. Steve Font, Mark Rabillas completing the top 30.
And that'll be your entire field as for now. 29 cars specifically on the grid tonight. James, you take a look at the track facts at Road America. Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, the United States opened back in 1955. Very historic racetrack here at James and Road Course. 14 turns, all going to be very different tonight. Of course, the length 4 miles flat is 6.5 kilometers. And of course, our race lap record was set none other by an Indy car as Alex Zanardi in CART 1998. Fantastic record, but I know these cars will be a little bit slower. That doesn't mean that we're not going to see any of the fun come to the green flag.
Maybe a 20-second difference there around this 4.08 mile, 6.515 kilometer circuit with 13 turns. This race is 70 minutes total in length. We'll have a competition caution around the 30-minute mark to split this up. Drivers have one quick repair available and 2 sets of tires available in the pits. Most importantly, you've got a fixed setup here with 58% fuel. This is the default setup for iRacing that these drivers are using this evening, so it's what you can just rip and go and take right out of the box when you load up this track in Sim. And currently, it is the default day for iRacing, May 15, 2021 in Sim, right around 4:15 p.m. local time. Air temp is 65 degrees Fahrenheit, track temp 76 degrees Fahrenheit. Very cool weather here on a mostly cloudy skies. Winds are headed to the north at 2 miles an hour, no humidity. So this is a very, very high grip weather setup. It is meant to play into the hands of these drivers as much as possible. You'll see some relatively fast lap times, but If you think that's going to make getting around here easier, it won't. Trust me, as we take a look at live points there on the right side, you get a sense of who's near the bubble, who isn't. Also of note this evening, this is the last race that drivers have the ability to use for their one drop in the regular season. They cannot drop the season finale at Chicagoland, and all points tonight take into consideration drops entering this evening. So you see the bubble there, Ford Martin, Justin Melillo, and the two DJ Rangers right there. Gary Sexton currently the last man in. Mark Rubilis, the first man out, along with Garrett Smithley. You've got the 11 of Steve Affon in there, the 36 of Garrett Miller, and don't forget the 29 machine as well, James Bickford, all fighting on the edge. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on how that battle goes over the course of the evening as these drivers work through the carousel for the first time, coming out of the hurry downs with the carousel, the most iconic corner and the signature corner of Road America without question, especially when you had, you had the Johnsonville Bronx sign. You've got a few more signages over there now, but every time they come through there and I'd see a race here on TV, I'd think, man, I really wish I was grilling trackside and feed myself a brat or two, because those things are pretty tasty last time I checked, Kenneth.
You could probably get some Sargento cheese as well, because we've got the trucks, we've got the signage, it's all over Road America. I think that's one of the staple parts of this track, is just the signage everywhere. You can see it, you already know where it's at, you know what part of the track it's in. So I figure these drivers may have to think about that as they're using their brake markers. But what I'm going to see, James, is this final section on this road course. You talk about the first section, that first half, it is very tough in its own right, but then you kind of have to swing around this last section. You go to Canada corner right here, turn 12, one of the toughest parts of the racetrack where you have to be hard on the brakes, very much for passing opportunities, and then you swing by the Bill Mitchell bend in turn 13 before you set for the final corner and the long straightaway all the way to the start finish line. So while you do have to get that first half underway, this second half will be crucial if anyone wants to make passes, especially if it's for the front of the field and for points.
Getting set to come through the final corner at Road America right before we get going. Turn 14, Adam Cabot and Gabe Wood to lead us to green flag racing in this Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge. The next to last race of the regular season for season number 3 of Monday Night Racing. Waiting for the green flag to drop, waiting for Adam Cabot to take off. It unfurls, he goes, and we are underway at iRacing's Virtual Road America, and they stacked up just a little bit behind. Looks like Jeff Green almost missed a shift there deep in the field, but as it stands, it'll be Cabot and Wood who go door to door into turn 1 for the first time.
See, down into turn 1, couple of drivers trying to swing out wide, and you see Gabe Wood already with that heap of momentum. They stay side by side, him and Adam Cabot, ahead for the hard braking turn 2. Gotta watch out, be very easy on the brakes here, James, because you do not want to get into anybody else, nor do you want to ruin your own race car. You see the entire field work by, but Adam Cabot able to get the momentum to the Sargento Bridge. He goes to the lead for the next corner.
That and cold tires absolutely matter. You're going to see a different braking points or two as you've got cars all over the place trying to get down into turn 5 for the first time. There goes DJ Cummings sideways and off over at turn 5. Contact with one car. Couldn't tell who, at least immediately, but Cummings goes off after starting in 5th. He's going to have his work cut out for him already down to 13th as they make their way through the hurry downs.
Yeah, that's going to be a very tough part of the track, James, because you're going to be hard on the brakes. You saw the entire pack there, and unfortunately, DJ Cummings, the victim of it all, he's got some damage. Luckily, I don't believe it's too much to really hinder the performance of his race car, but we'll just have to see as the night moves forward. You see a battle for second heating up as Brad Perez in that 30 Ford Mustang, he's already putting the pressure on Gabe Wood, got by through one of the corners and went on the runoff, and through the carousel, he's got a nose to the inside.
Nice work there from Brad Perez to get a good run off the corner and make a move on Gabe Wood and get through to P2. It's Perez in second, Wood back to third. Everybody's still trying to chase Adam Cabot as Gabe Wood goes a little bit further back.
I think one driver had some problems, James. It was Joshua Balicki. He crashed off of the exit of the carousel. He's down in the inside wall. Now he's finally picked up the pace. You see him there. He was stuck just letting the entire field by. You mentioned it earlier in this race, a home track for him. We'll take a look at the replay. I think might as well just have lost it. Just trying to put in the gas off the corner, trying to keep that momentum up. And the car just decides to step out. And one thing about these next-gen cars is that it's very hard to save. When this car goes out of whack, it is very hard to keep it and correct it back straight. Some of that issue for Joshua Balicki as he goes right into the wall as well.
He's in trouble. Anthony Alfredo in trouble as well. As we take a look on board Anders Krohn, can confirm that Krohn was the driver who got into DJ Cummings on turn 5 of the opening lap. So he ended up in trouble. And Anthony Alfredo, I believe, did just about the exact same thing that Josh Bilicki did. Although looks like Alfredo, just from what I could tell, got the curve a little bit more and spun himself out on that final corner. Heavy damage to the control machine. As for Bilicki with that nose damage, we'll take a look at Alfredo's incident here, give you the second half of what happened. But he came through turn 14 and just tried to gas it up and could not keep the power away to keep the thing off. Actually got a little bit of grass too. That's part of the reason why he went around. But corners like that, turn 9, turn 14, good that we have a few examples of folks going around, because this track, more than maybe any other road course we've seen in Monday Night Racing this season at least, forces you to be patient. It forces you to wait to get back on the throttle, and there's a lot of throttle holding that you need to do. As Gabe Wood goes wide, there goes Anders Krohn to jump up into third, but it forces you to wait until you get back on the throttle, because you got so much power that if you get on the throttle too early, you will absolutely loop yourself around. That's exactly what happened to Josh Bilicki here, and it's exactly what happened to Anthony Alfredo coming out of the final corner.
And another factor, James, the part that you said that of how hard it is to manage the car and how it tests your patience, there's not a lot of runoff area at Road America. You have the rumble strip, sure, you maybe have some asphalt, some pavement at the exit of some corners, like you see right there at the exit of the King. You have some of it, but there's not a lot. So if you try to push the boundaries of the car a little bit too much, you're easily going to be sliding into the grass. And that's exactly what happened with Anthony Alfredo there. He tried to get into that pavement, tried to get the most out of the exit of the corner, but just nabbed a piece of that, the gravel, or at least the grass right there at the exit of turn 14. And that's exactly what sent that rear tire around. So you really have to watch for that over the course of tonight, how far you're going to push the car and where the limits are of the track are, because at places like Circuit of the Americas, you have all the space in the world, but here at Road America, it feels like you have almost none.
Yep, it's tough. It's very tough. So Adam Cabot nearly had a moment going through turn 1. The rear end of that 17 machine was sideways and then some through the middle of the corner, and he at least gave up a little bit of time to Brad Perez, who has just been stalking the 17 machine. And you see Josh Bilicki in trouble Bilicki running the 52 paint scheme this evening, but in trouble yet again. Not the way he wanted his race to start, but again, drivers do have a faster pair available to them and will have a competition caution halfway through this race, so there will be time for Bilicki to make the gains he needs to make to get back up to the front. Good battle there between Adam Cabot and Brad Perez at the pointy end of this field as we work early days and early laps in this Big Green End Next Gen Challenge. We can confirm after that first lap that it was all of DJ Cummings, Josh Bilicki, and Anthony Alfredo that spun in some fashion over the course of the opening circuit here at Road America. Those three in trouble. They're well down the leaderboard. Everybody else was able to make it through at least in some form on these opening laps as we look at this very good battle for P3. It's Gabe Wood, you've got Will Rogers, the defending series champion there, and Anders Krohn also fighting for position.
Anders Krohn, one of those drivers who finished in top 3 last week. James, a very chaotic race for the super late models at the Worldwide Technology Raceway in Gateway, just trying to keep that momentum up. The Norwegian driver started in 6th, has only made 1 position up, but he's currently in that fight. You see Will Rogers, one of the fastest in practice with a blank Ford Mustang, but he's got all the speed in the world, and he's carrying it on through this race as he tries to get to the top 3.
Sit down to pit road for the first time this evening. Justin Prince, what do you have for us early on in this race?
Well, when it comes to some of these drivers, especially with some of the discussions pre-race, they discussed how difficult it was to keep the car on the racetrack. Gabe Wood described it as picturing you lost your wallet in the mouth of a saber-toothed tiger. It's that difficult with the next-gen cars here at this racetrack. Josh Slate emphasized it's very tough to drive at this racetrack in general, with so many hard braking zones with this car as well. While others, such as Anthony Alfredo, have been trying to utilize this track for the real-world race for their braking marks, but it's gotten to where he's now terrified in the race car as well. It's getting to where things are getting nerve-wracking for some of the drivers, after some of them were in a more cordial mood and fun mood just prior to the green.
losing your wallet in the mouth of a saber-toothed tiger. Now, we've been around these drivers for a bit. We know Gabe Wood is usually good for a colorful quote or 2 or 3, but that's next level so far as I'm concerned. That's quite the visual, to say the least, Kenneth.
Well, I think if any of those words, it would definitely come out of somebody like Gabe Wood. I think that's probably a perfect example of what it's like. I don't think I could really come up with that. I think we talked about that pre-race, but there are troubles though for Gabe Wood. He was in this battle between Rogers and Crone. We mentioned it a little bit earlier, but he had gone around this point. See him heading for this left-hander right here, a little bit deep, and the car just ends up turning around. Luckily, no damage, so nobody really gets into him. And he's able to have a clean Chevrolet Camaro, but there's going to be a lot of lost track position as the car really stepped down. You can see it from the front of the 47 of Anders Crone. Right there, the 50 goes in the corner. The car just sends itself and it spins itself around. Had a nice job to avoid it, though.
So Wood goes around. He's back to the 9th position at this stage. Meanwhile, Brad Perez has managed to eke up on Adam Cabin. Looks to the inside there, beginning to make his dives, working with the Beef People Mesquite, the Winn-Dixie car that Mark Martin was so dominant in the Busch Series. The former record holder for wins in that series before Kyle Busch broke it a few seasons ago. But again, you see that black and that yellow, Kenneth, and you see that 60 machine. I think maybe fitting that Brad's got the 30. If he can be half as good as Mark was in that car, still think he's going to have a good shot to win.
Well, he's got a very good shot right now to our race leader. And when we talk about him and the way he's been very accustomed to road courses, he's a driver of his own right. Of course, he's a member of Martin's Motorsports. He's a crew member for that NASCAR Xfinity Series team. But he's also a driver in the SCCA Mazda Miata Spec Series, and he's driven at this track before. And on many other road course occasions, James, we've seen him do very well. His first start came with the Mazda Miatas at Lime Rock. He was a heavy contender before unfortunately being taken out with damage. And you have that what if section with him, of whether if he did not have that damage, if nothing ever happened to him, would he have won that race? It could have been a big question. He probably would have been a driver to go out and win that race, as it seemed as though Gabe Wood, from the starting front row on the grid, James, has had an awful night ever since that spin. He's an entrance to turn 1. He did not have a lot of fun here as he was trying to get for this braking zone, and now he's got no hood and no front clip as he gets around TJ Majors and just completely lost the braking zone there.
Shades of Jimmy Johnson at Watkins Glen some 21 years ago with the 50 machine. I imagine he's just waiting for the yellow flag at this point to get the car fixed up, and then he'll go back at it over the course of the second half of this race. But back to Brad Perez, who's right on board with the man out of Hollywood, Florida. It's an interesting point that you make, that his work is with Martin's Motorsports, with Racklick Ward, primarily in the Xfinity Series and the Truck Series. But I think his passion, fair to say, comes through at the road racing level. You see him running Spec Miatas all the time in SCCA and SVRA, like you said. That's really where his driving passion comes from. That's where he's found the vast majority of his success as a driver. And then also happens to be a Racing Spaces host as well. We know there's a good road racing presence there. So it's interesting. Oval racing pays the bills for Brad, but you can make a pretty strong argument that it's the road racing that is his first love. We'll see whether or not that translates into maybe some more speed or a win tonight as we look a little bit further back. This is James Bickford, TJ Majors, and Anthony Alfredo in 7th, 8th, and 9th. Remember, Bickford, one of the drivers near the playoff bubble, as is Majors. So these two with some work to do. I think they would not mind a good finish just to make their life a little bit easier heading into Chicagoland next week to try and wrap up the playoff spot.
Yeah, definitely need a good finish here if you're one of those drivers near the cutoff, because if you're above the cutoff, like I mentioned with Justin Melillo, you just want to have a solid night. You want to keep yourself clean. You don't want to have to worry about too many outside factors that can keep you out of a good finish. As long as you can keep the car clean, as long as you can survive, then you can get those points. Then work for Chicagoland with the NASCAR Xfinity Series cars and maybe build on that from there, continue to defend it. But for drivers underneath that cutoff, they have to be a little more aggressive. And for that, we look right there at the right side of your screen, your live points. You see the 15-point spread between Gary Sexton and the driver you're looking at on your screen right now, the 11 of Steve Alfont. Steve right now, he's currently running in 24th. He's got to pick it up a little bit, be a little more aggressive, maybe not too aggressive to get off the track, but he needs a good amount of these points to get ahead of where Gary is right now. And you see him, Sexton, running clearly within the top 10. So like you said at the top of the show, James, we're going to be watching this all night long. And I think any sort of incident, any sort of shift means any little bit amount of space between the point standings that will make a big difference come to Chicagoland.
I think you have a pretty good point there. Also of note, especially when you look at the live points, this could be a big night for Steve Affon in either a good way or a bad way because of the gap that Gary Sexton may or may not be able to put on him by races in. But right now, really solid stuff from Sexton, the driver of the number 13 Dirty Air Toyota Camry, currently P6 at this time. We go on board with Anthony Alfredo, trying to work his way around TJ Majors, move a little bit closer to the top 10. This will be for 7th if he can complete the pass.
And even with that early damage, that early spin, James has done a good job of picking it back up. Other drivers have had mistakes. The field has kind of strung out. So Alfredo is just using this to his advantage rather, with that damage. And you see him right now trying to make work of TJ Majors. You saw James Bickford in that group. He went around, and now he has damage around P9 behind this duo, unfortunately. So that only puts it down to these guys and these Ford Mustangs working for position. And I think Justin made a fantastic point when Anthony talked about it, and he mentioned it even at the interview last Monday night at Gateway. He said that this racetrack, this combo was going to be good for the parameters on how the real world NASCAR Cup Series race was going to fare, how these cars are going to handle at a track like this, and how he was going to really mentally and or physically prepare for the track in terms of the brake markers, in terms of just where the spacing is, kind of knowing your position on the racetrack. I think it's a very fantastic part for Anthony Alfredo in this league that he gets to test those things out as he actually makes that pass on TJ Majors for 7th.
He did indeed get around TJ Majors. Alfredo up to 7th. This is Anders Krohn and Will Rogers. They too in a good fight. Also of note, well, I guess we could maybe count DJ Cummings and Gabe Wood, but again, Wood with all that damage made it pretty easy for DJ Cummings to get around Wood and take over the 14th position. Just a little bit further back because we want some of the tighter battles in this field and keep our eyes on who does and who does not have pace and or who's out in their own zip code and who's bunched up like I would say sardines, but I guess brats if we're in Wisconsin, right? You know, beer and cheese and sausages and all.
I mean, I've never been to Wisconsin, so I don't even know if I can. I don't know if I can confirm nor deny that at this point. He's right on board with the 54 of Josh Bilicki. He's a Wisconsin native. He was looking for a good race, got that damage, but he currently right 17th. And right now, James, I figure that a lot of these drivers, even drivers like Bilicki, drivers like Gabe Wood, with all that damage, they are just waiting for that halfway mark. They want those 24 or so minutes to come by quickly and then have that yellow come out, have that opportunity to get a fast prepare down pit road, and then just continue going on and try to build on something positively for the rest of this race. Maybe not so much of a worry for these guys right here. Jeff Green returning to the series, Justin Melillo with fairly clean cars so far.
Just waiting for the moment, I think. I wonder how important it's going to be to have a faster pair at the end of this. You know, folks like Josh Bilicki are not really going to have that option. With the damage that they've got, they're going to have to take it. Gabe Wood in particular stand out as the two drivers who have had pace, who have also found trouble early. But if you're somebody like a Jeff Green, if you're somebody like a Brad Perez, if you're somebody like an Adam Cabot, and you end up wrecking in the second half of the race, you still have a chance if you've got that faster pair in the back pocket. The problem is that if we don't get a full course yellow, then you may end up completely out to lunch and without enough time to make up any gaps that would develop if you have to come down pit road to get your car fixed up.
And speaking of pit road, James, we have one driver down there already, one notable one within the top 5. That is Anthony Alfredo. His 38 Ford Mustang has made the trip down pit road. Still have yet to see a faster pair deployed on that car as he's putting up the jacks and just trying to get pit road underway at this point. But you see him there out of pit road right now, 14.1 seconds. A couple of drivers also down pit road, but I figure most of them is just for damage. You see Ron Capps, he's been stuck there for a while.
So Alfredo comes down pit road for service, but doesn't quite have the damage entirely fixed up. So he saved his faster pair essentially, which then means, was he struggling for rubber? Did he want maybe fresher tires perhaps in that sense?
He probably could. That will probably gain him a lot of time, but with this, at this point, you can also consider the fact that if you pit, you're not going to really suffer that much because of the distance that has already been put between the entire field. So if you pit, maybe you lose one position, maybe you lose two, but you won't really lose all too much. I think for Anthony Alfredo, he's fallen back to 15th, but with the distance and especially with guys that are going to be pitting probably very soon, he's going to pick all that back up, and he's going to make up the difference with the fresh tires and the consistency that he's carried so far in this race. So I don't think it's going to be a big concern. I think the call for tires early may be a good one if he's planning something for the future at this point.
Good look there again at the battle between Will Rogers and Anders Krohn. Here's Jeff Green. We've also got James Bickford in the mix. Justin Malillo there. This is 9th, 10th, 11th. One of the better battles on track. A lot of really good battles right around the edge of the top 10. That's Stallneck, DJ Cummings, and Gabe Wood in a trio behind the trio that you see on screen. And they're fighting pretty hard for 12th, 13th, and 14th. So interesting stuff here as we see Green look, at least for a moment, to the inside of Bickford. Maybe try and pull off something around Canada corner. Here's Anthony Alfredo once again, seeing if he can get around Josh Slate.
And I think he had a moment here, James, as well. I think hopefully not the commentator's curse that said he was going to make up the difference, and you see him entering the corner right here. It seemed okay. The car was all right. Car was straight. And then right about here, entering the carousel, I think is where he had that issue. And I think I heard Josh Balicki say over the radio that that was the same thing I did. So it must have been a carousel exit issue. And indeed it was. Spun the car around and went straight for the meeting with that inside barrier.
You want to get on the throttle so early there. You feel like there's so much time you can gain, but the reality is that if you get on it too early, you spin yourself out. That's exactly what Balicki did. That's exactly what Alfredo's done. Justin Prince, last week heard Alfredo's gotten pretty nervous over the course of the first half of this race.
Yeah, we described that earlier, and he's emphasized that the cold tires on the next-gen car are so challenging. And he emphasized that it was so important to be able to control your car. In fact, before the race, he gave advice to some of the drivers over the in-game radio, recommending they back up their corners because of the cold tires. Remember, in the next-gen race for the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series at Chicago Street Course, guess who went flying off into the tire barrier into the first corner and learned that experience very quickly? Anthony Alfredo. So he's right now remembering those cold tires can bring plenty of challenges.
He's got the fresh rubber because he came down pit road, but again, that rubber is cold. It takes a few laps to get warmed up. Your braking zones are going to have to be a little bit longer. Ultimately, you're going to be a few tenths slower until your tires come up to temps, Kenneth.
Yeah, and especially with these cars, the new tires that Goodyear has popped on these NASCAR next-gen cars, of course, additionally with the new rims, the fact that, of course, they're single lug nut, but they're also a lot bigger than the diameter of the wheels on the current Gen 6 Cup cars. So that also makes a big difference. And I figure you can kind of compare it to an Indy car. If you have the cold tires, your car's really not going to do well around the track like this, and then you really have to wait, kind of prep the car up, kind of get into a slight jog, and then finally get it to the full sprint with the tires all the way warmed up. So that's an issue that Alfredo is having, and I'm figuring that a lot of these drivers are going to have the same issue. I know that a handful of them have not pitted, but by the time they do, they're going to feel the effects of it when that caution comes out and we may get a restart.
Anders Krohn, Will Rogers again there. Not terribly far away from Brad Perez at this point, who has fallen off a bit. Has not been able to maintain the same pace that Adam Cabot has. And Perez now about 4.2 seconds back as there goes Rogers off the track at the end of the hurry down, so he'll bleed some time. We look at Anders Krohn jump ahead of the 65. David Schildhaus about 10 seconds back of this, so he isn't able to take advantage of Rogers' mistake, but Rogers back to P4 now in the 65 car.
Small mistake, and a good job by him from getting away from that barrier and potentially keeping himself away from damage. There's DJ Cummings right now. You're running on board with him. He's behind the small group, and one of the smaller groups you're seeing right now is Justin Malillo, Jeff Green, and it was James Bickford for a moment, but Bickford has finally head down pit road. He's gotten the fast spare. He's got a clean Ford Mustang from here on out to the rest of this race. And DJ Cummings, we saw him go for a spin in that exact same corner that they're exiting right now. A fantastic way to come back from it and just trying to peek his way back to the top 10. Figure that's some good points for him, considering you see him right there at the top of the list, 9th right now on the live point standings of this series.
Be good if you can get out in front. The big number to watch is that gap between the 13 and the 11. Gary Sexton and Steve Alfont, those two make up the very end of the playoff cutoff. It's top 13 that advanced to the playoffs for season 3. That'll be it once we wrap up next week's race featuring the cars of the NASCAR Xfinity Series at Chicagoland Speedway. Now, font there you see on your screens from Behind the Wall Media, he and teammate Josh Slate there as we see another car off in the background, but everybody working and just trying to figure out where they need to make their move. Here's TJ Cummings trying to work over Justin Malillo and get a spot in the top 10.
Team just trying to set up this move, and this is a place to do it right there. Going to be hard on the brakes to the inside of Malillo, and that's a perfect way to open the door and get that quick track position. That's one of the features that Road America has, is that you see Ford Martin in the 07. He had gone around in his own accord off Canada corner. I think we'll see exactly what happened to the 07, but he's had some issues. I don't believe we've seen many out of the 07. Probably one quick spin earlier in this race, but it was this spin right in front of the field. I don't believe he's got damage, but also another incident that will set him further back in the track position in the running order. You see him right here off the kink, but it's going to be from Canada corner, James. It's going to arise with the issue.
It was smart work from Ford Martin to make sure that he stayed off the wall and didn't incur any damage to his Fox Sports Chevy Camaro. But just looking here at some of the braking zones and how tricky it can be, and yeah, same sort of issue that we've seen, and he knew it immediately before he even completed getting back on the gas. He just immediately locked down the brakes and tried to make sure that he didn't end up in any trouble of his own, as we see him come down pit road for service, presumably to get some 4 new Goodyear's Eagles on and get his car fixed up. Josh Bilicki also coming in as well, as we're beginning to work near the edge of the window in which pit road will be closed around the competition caution. They're going to lock it down with 5 minutes to go before we get our comp yellow, which should come in about the next 5 minutes or so.
So that's going to be very interesting here, James, because we still have about another 30 minutes to go, theoretically, when we get this yellow. So we're seeing this window already play into account. We see a couple of drivers a lap down or more. There's some of that lap traffic, and of course the leaders are already going around. So that's going to make things more interesting on the strategy part, because it's not all about what you do on track. It's going to be what you do in the execution down pit road. And speaking of which, your top 4 are all bunched up. They have already entered pit road. That's Cabot, Perez, Crone, and Rogers down for service.
Everybody in as Cabot goes way deep there. You don't necessarily see him just with the way pit road here works. It's a sharp angle out if you're in that last stall, but Perez is in, Cabot's in, Rogers is in, Crone is in. The question is, what order do they come out of pit road from? There goes Adam Cabot. He takes off. Brad Perez would be next. If he can get going, he'll take off. Same time Anders Crone does. Will Rogers will be 4th in that book, as everybody just about is going to come down and get service before we get the competition caution.
I believe that was a key moment right there, James. You saw the exit off pit road. Adam Cabot in a league of his own coming out to turn 1, while Brad Perez had to get out a little bit later, and he's under pressure now from Anders Crone. That was a good job by Adam Cabot to set this entire sit up, because we saw him and Perez kind of crunched up. The top 2 were walking away from the field. Felt like Perez was going to continue to apply the pressure. Then he started letting off. Cabot got faster. Perez started to fall back a little bit, and then on that green flag stint, the distance is already spread apart, so then Adam Cabot can continue to walk away with a solid pit stop and have Brad Perez be in a position like this, have to fight with other drivers for a position, as Anders Crone goes by in the 47 for P2.
Crone makes the move on Brad Perez and move Anders Crone up into second. Adam Cabot back in front of all of this and well clear of everybody. He had a great pit stop, up now by about 7.3 seconds. Of course, that all to be erased the moment we get the comp yellow, but he'll enjoy it while it lasts. As we go back a little bit further, how about Justin Malillo, Gary Sexton? We're on board with the man out of Hanover, Pennsylvania now. He'll slide right behind the 53 going through turn 5. Probably not the bad idea, because that arguably is the toughest braking zone on this circuit. It's downhill, it's long. That's one of the tightest corners on this racetrack. It's so easy to lock the wheels up going down that hill and put yourself in a world of hurt. But thankfully, Kenneth, there's a lot of runoff there in the event that you do go a little bit long.
I mentioned how narrow this track is. That's like the one place where it's the full exception. You have all the pavement in the world. Maybe turn 1, if you can call it that, a little bit, that it has a lot of pavement that you can get by. But yeah, that corner right there, so tough. And I feel like you have to be very brave. You kind of have to go all the way in, put your chips right to the front of the table and say, I'm going to make this pass, because if you make a small mistake, then it can easily go all the way. As Gary Sexton's picked up a heap of momentum coming to the kink here on Justin Malillo. We saw Malillo in a battle with DJ Cummings. He lost that battle in the Canada corner. I figure that Gary Sexton may be attempting the same thing as he tries to make the move on the Ford Mustang up ahead.
as Gary Sexton tries to make moves on this Ford Mustang. We've seen a few people go off track and then come back on and almost rally cross it in some way, shape, or form. But Justin Prince, Gary Sexton's got a little bit of a different rally-inspired race of his own that he's running.
Yes, indeed. Right now, he's got his spotter who has a track map in front of him, and every time they're making their way around the corners, he ends up giving him a warning of what direction the corner is and the amount of angle. For example, 90 left, for example, for a 90-degree corner to the left in Sector 2, for example, or 90 right for what they're coming up to right now, just to make sure that he remembers where these corners are, where to hit the marks, etc. It's something I haven't seen too much of before in the past here, James, but it's an interesting way to make sure you hit your marks and stay on the racetrack.
Reminds you of anybody who's had the chance to listen to rally folks, certainly I think falls in that camp of, right 3, 1,000 meters, left 2, right 5, left 6, so on and so forth. That's the kind of thing that Gary's getting in his ear right now. So intriguing to hear his spotter and that team take a completely different approach to getting around this racetrack. As he gets around Justin Malillo, we can confirm Sexton goes to 7th. This is the battle for the race lead, though. Anders Krohn all of a sudden has reeled in Adam Cabot.
He certainly has, and it was Adam Cabot going off track. A small and rare mistake out of the 17 we've seen so far in this race. Pretty much put that gap all the way to what it is right now, which is basically 0, as Anders Krohn has picked up the pace in this second stint. Ever since that pit stop, he's been relatively fast on the racetrack, and now he is just really putting that pressure on Adam Cabot. This is the second time, James, we've seen Adam Cabot in a situation like this. It was once with Brad Perez. It's here with Anders Krohn, and off turn 14, Anders Krohn, how about that, takes the race lead.
Big move there from Anders Krohn, and it'll be the first time that we have a new leader in this Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge. Give it to the man out of Stavanger, Norway. Anders Krohn, your race leader, with 13 laps complete. Cabot already sliding back in maybe 1.3, 1.4 seconds before we even get to turn 1. Meanwhile, Anthony Alfredo was able to just clear Justin Malillo a little bit further back in the field. Alfredo to 8th, Malillo to 9th, as we wait for the competition to caution to come out momentarily.
See Alfredo right there, some of that damage. He's waiting for about 10 minutes to pass. He can get that fast spare, get a clean car. I think he's done another good job to come back through this field. Here's another attempt at a pass a little bit further up the field. James, DJ Cummings trying to put that pressure on Brad Perez. It's the first time we've seen Perez kind of mire back in traffic. You see him in between a Rogers and Cummings sandwich right there, as Perez has huge damage on the front end of his car. I figure that might be hurting his Ford Mustang one way or another, and we may have to look at that, because I don't believe we saw that, James, or he had a small incident there, and of course his nose damage is going to really affect that speed down these long straights.
So he'll pick up the nose damage, but again, fast repairs available to these drivers when we get the competition caution. So there certainly is time for this to work out in these drivers' favor. In the meantime, though, we've got a good battle pack. And how about DJ Cummings, too? We need to give a shout to the driver behind the 10 machine. He started and then got spun and then ends up in... I could not plan a better commentator's curse if I tried in a million years as Cummings goes around. I was about to say that DJ Cummings had been knocked out of the way by Anders Krohn on that first run down to turn 5 in the opening lap, and spent the entirety of this opening stint clawing his way all the way back to the front just for that to happen and for him to slide back a little bit further. So certainly not as far back as he was. He's back to 8th from 5th, but work to be done for DJ Cummings still.
I think in any case, with that mistake, James, to be in the top 10 after what happened to him on lap number 1, I think that's still a feat to behold and a feat to be proud of, as he tries to now get the positions that he's worked back up on. And actually, race control has decided to throw the yellow with 38 minutes to go. So I figured, James, this is the competition caution that a lot of these drivers were anticipating, and that's going to bunch the field up and maybe open the door for future pit strategy to the end of this event.
So, drivers coming down pit road. This is going to be a chance for everyone to top off and a chance for them to get themselves sorted. Anybody who needs fast repairs that might be quick otherwise is going to get the chance to fix their cars up, and it should make for a slightly different complexion to the second half of this race.
It definitely is. You're going to see everybody start to come up with a pace car. And what has happened with Gary Sexton? Issue with him coming out of Canada corner to the final section of the racetrack. He's got damage. I don't believe it's too much on his Toyota Camry. And again, he goes off in the second to last corner. Boy, it's been an abysmal last section of the course for Gary Sexton this time around. Not exactly sure whether it was just trying to put the throttle in or what have you, but fortunately for Gary Sexton, I think he's got the yellow. He can get the repairs done soon.
So Gary Sexton in trouble early on, and I think maybe brain off there just because it was competition caution. Everybody getting lined up behind Anders Krone, but we'll let everyone get bunched back together behind the pace car and remind you that tonight's broadcast of Monday Night Racing is brought to you by Big Green Egg, the world's largest producer and international distributor of the highest quality ceramic Kamado style charcoal grills. They spent over 40 years mastering the best, most versatile, fuel efficient, and easy to use grills across the globe. Because with an egg, there's no need for a separate grill, smoker, pizza oven, or rotisserie device. Because the egg does all of this and more to perfection. For more information, you can visit their website at www.biggreenegg.com. Podcast this evening is also brought to you by our friends at Tufco Flooring. Tufco Flooring is an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. They don't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach, and neither should you. They listen to your needs and requirements and develop custom solutions for every client. And for more information, you can visit their website at www.tufcoflooring.com. And finally, tonight's broadcast is presented to you by our friends at Maconi Setup Shop, your home for iRacing setups and the official setup shop of Richmond Raceway Esports. From legends to cup cars, they have you covered, with dirt setups also available for late models, modifieds, and wing sprint cars. At Maconi Setup Shop, there are setups, but your victories. And visit their website at MaconiSetupShop.com for more information today. Anders Krone will lead the charge into pit road. Justin Prince, any final notes from pit road before it becomes feeding time at the zoo?
Well, many of the drivers are talking about trying to potentially go for a splash of fuel, but no tires possibly, to make sure they can make it to the end on gas. That's the main talking point for a lot of the organizations as well. It should be worth noting that Gary Sexton will be taking a fuel and tear off only. He has elected not to use his fast repair after losing focus and crashing to the tire barrier was the explanation for what happened to Sexton.
So that makes a little bit more sense, but again, I'm trying to keep note of who is going to burn a fast repair, who's going to get their car fixed up, and who is going to take advantage of the one golden goose we've got in this race to get their car put back to pieces. The Brad Perez's, the Josh Palickis and company, as everybody comes down pit road, save for Anders Krone, Adam Cabot, waiting to see whether or not anybody else decides to join, but those two making a strategy play there, Kenneth.
And also to note, they had pitted fairly recently, so I think this is just going to continue what they have. I don't think they really want to interrupt the rhythm that they built with this strategy. So using this yellow as a time to kind of relax, regroup, and try to work on the next stage. But just continuing the strategy they already built in the first green flag stint as everybody else goes down.
So it's Rogers, Perez, Shieldhouse, Sexton, Alfredo, Cummings, Jeff Green in for service. Not too many of these drivers, but big names that have been players in this race up to this point. Worth noting where, how, and who shuffles out ahead of everybody. And the answer to that question about Will Rogers, just ahead of Brad Perez, then David Shieldhouse, then Gary Sexton, and then Anthony Alfredo is able to beat Jeff Green off of pit road.
I don't believe we've talked too much about defending champion Will Rogers in this race, James. The fact that he's been able to keep himself consistent to the top 5 as a road course driver here on this race. He's done a great job of keeping his car, number one, clean, but also keeping his car consistent and fast. We saw him as one of the big players in the Mazda Miata race at Lime Rock Park, so maybe not too big of a surprise that he's very good here tonight. But the fact that many other drivers have had issues, it's good to see him in this running in the top 5.
Time to talk to our Bryant Shock Technologies in-race reporter, DJ Cummings. And DJ, we want to talk about intriguing and interesting races. You've been to the back and then to the front, and then you slid a little bit again and had to make the charge again. Are you excited to probably hold the title for most cars passed in this race, at least up to this point?
Definitely. I'd say it's always a nice award to have, to know that you can actually pass cars. Yeah, we put ourselves in a hole there. First lap there when Anders wanted to almost basically pushed me on the grass, and then had to play some catch up there. I'll do a little different strategy, and then tried to go a little too hard and then slid a little back, but I think we'll put ourselves here in a pretty good spot. I feel like I can get I think we could get ourselves back up to the top 5 and walk away with some points here. That's been the main goal all along, is just to get ourselves a decent points day heading into next week, but I feel like we're in a pretty good spot right now. Just got to keep it on the pavement.
Knowing that the fast repair is going to be going for most of these drivers, knowing that there won't be second chances in this half of the race like there was the first half of the race, does that change your approach and your mentality and change the way you go at the second stint?
It does sometimes. I think in this case, you might have those folks that might be sitting on that one fast repair that might be little trigger happy and might want to outbrake you in the corner. In my case, since I got a little too much damage there on that first lap, so I'm going to probably go about 80% here. And if I pass cars, I pass cars. I'm just going to keep it on the pavement strategy and let everybody else make their own mistakes.
We'll see how it pans out for you. DJ, thanks for the time, and we look forward to watching you in the second half of tonight's race.
Thank you, guys.
It's DJ Cummings, our Bryant Stock Technologies in-race reporter. We turn our attention from DJ Cummings to the field at large, because it's time for our midway race break, which is always is brought to you by iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more, as we should, I believe, get the one to go this time by. It's Anders Krohn who leads this group. Adam Cabot is going to come in along with Gabe Wood. TJ Majors is third, Wood fourth, Will Rogers fifth. Brad Perez sits in sixth. Seventh is where you'll find David Schildhouse. Gary Sexton currently holds the 8th position. 9th goes to Anthony Alfredo, and 10th to DJ Cummings.
11th right now will belong to the 8 of Jeff Green, with James Bickford actually going to pit. He's going to lose a couple positions. Ford Martin will be actually up to 11th. Matt Stonick will be 12th. 13th to Joshua Balicki. You have DJ Cummings, James Bickford, Joshua Slate back to P16. 17th will belong to the 88 of Mike Clay. Then Robbie Lyons in 18th. Maxwell Cannon in P19. And P20 will belong to the 12 of Brandon Brown.
Last car on the lead lap is Justin Malillo. He's 21st. 22nd belongs to Steve Affont. Drew Welker is 22nd and 23rd on the board. Welker's back to 23rd. Ron Capps is 24th. 25th belongs to Michael Massey. Garrett Miller rides in 26th. And the 27th spot is Noah Lewis. Paul Sutton currently holds 28th, 29th, and 30th to Mark Rebillis and Dylan Welch, respectively. And that is your iRacing midway race break. With over 170,000 drivers on the service and over 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is your portal to the racing world. You can get on track today at iRacing.com. And a few new road courses that arrived with the June build. The standout, probably the Red Bull Ring, home of the Austrian Grand Prix, where we'll see Formula One next weekend after they had a sparkling race there for the first of their doubleheaders the weekend before. Also got the proper GT3 Porsche 911 into the sim for the first time. It just about completes Porsche's GT roster in iRacing. And for everybody who loved to call the Cup car the GT3 car, not quite. This is the actual GT3 car. 2 GT3 spec that we see run in the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship and in GT3 classes and series all across the world. So road folks definitely got a few offerings over the course of this build and have enjoyed them, I think, in the first few weeks.
I think you missed the Formula V. That was another introduction of the roadside for the rookie series, and it was a free car introduced to iRacing. So if you were a road racer at heart, you probably are going to the build with all the new content, all the updates that came out. Even the Mazda Miata got some updates as well. So bunch of new stuff coming for a lot of the road cars, and I think fitting that we're at a road course around the time of that build. A fantastic way to kind of cap off how iRacing is. And Road America, just one of those tracks as a staple. Not new, it's been around iRacing for a while, but I think still provides a lot of fun, even for myself as a sim racer.
Got a nice visual update last year, so it looks pretty sharp, and we'll see how sharp the rest of this field is in the second half of the Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge. We'll take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. Stay here. You'll see the conclusion of tonight's Monday Night Racing event for the Virtual Road America on Podium Esports.
We are an industrial flooring company specializing in custom floors and drains. We don't believe in the one-size-fits-all approach to flooring, and neither should you. When you choose Tufco, we consult with you about your needs, industry requirements, and factor in numerous variables. After assessing your facility, we engineer your floor and drains, then install everything ourselves. That's the Tufco way.
Visit our website at tufcoflooring.com.
There's a place where fire and flavor are celebrated, where grilling traditions and new techniques are perfected. Here in Big Green Egg Country, you can grill it, roast it, smoke it, or bake it. It's the most versatile grill you'll ever own. Simple to light, easy to use, comes with a free lifetime warranty. Have it delivered to your door by a certified dealer in your community and start enjoying the ultimate cooking experience. Shop online for home delivery at biggreenegg.com. That's biggreenegg.com.
Welcome back to Podium Esports coverage of the Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge at iRacing's Virtual Road America. Chase Blank, Kenneth Bueno, Justin Princeton on pit road, Ryan Power, and Dougie Beard, our camera producers. We come back to Green Flag Racing with the final 30 minutes of tonight's event. Anders Krohn takes off. TJ Majors sitting in second, and this is all going to be about pit strategy and fuel conservation potentially from here on out, as you see Will Rogers bobbing a little bit down the straightaway, but Krohn, Major, Stalneck leading this group off into turn one.
It's going to be about fuel strategy, James, but this restart is all going to be about track position. If you can be aggressive to gain all those positions, it has to be now when the field is bunched up, as opposed to later in the run where everybody strings out. Krohn, though, had a fantastic job to control the restart and keep the lead through the first two corners. That's not what we saw at the exit of turn two and the initial start of this race. He's right on board with Anthony Alfredo, trying to work for P9 right now as he works on David Schildhaus and Ford Martin up ahead.
Where does everybody go? Alfredo locks it up on the brakes a little bit. He's going to bounce into David Schildhaus once, bounce into David Schildhaus twice, but maintain the car in the right direction. He'll slide behind the 20 machine, drop into the 8th spot. No incidents amongst our top 10 yet, but there goes one. Gabe Wood off a little bit further back.
Unfortunately there for Gabe Wood, he is able to keep the car composed. I don't believe he has too much damage to his Chevrolet Camaro. He's going to find himself in P19 behind Brennan Brown and pretty much everybody in this group. You see most drivers now, some of them side by side. I saw Jeff Green to the inside of one driver. There's Joshua Slate trying to make a move for P15. So right now is the moment to attack. But you look on board with the two TJ Majors. We've seen him ride between the top 10 this entire race. And now he's got Anders Krohn, the race leader, right in his crosshairs.
Anders Krohn is there, Majors is second, but these drivers stayed out. I think that's the most important thing to note. They have not come down pit road in a little while, so they are working on a two-stop strategy to try and get home. They will have to pit. Everybody else is trying to make it home on one stop as we look at some of the great shots provided by Dougie Beard. A little bit of action further back as you see your four leaders, Perez, Rogers, Majors, Krohn. Here's Matt Stalneck that we go on board with. He sits in the 9th spot trying to chase down the man who controlled the first half of this race, Adam Cabot.
And Adam Cabot, James, is one of those drivers who pitted under the yellow flag. So we saw him pit under green. We saw him stay out the first lap. We kind of figured he was going to stay on the same strategy as Anders Krohn is on right now. I think he second-guessed it, went down pit road. So he's going to be part of that group that's going to go for that one-stop strategy to the end of this race, as he's got a pretty much windshield full of Anthony Alfredo and David Schildhaus. This trifecta trying to make themselves for position. Adam Cabot just trying to be patient to get around these guys at this point.
Alfredo to the inside of Schildhaus. He's tried to make that move about 3 or 4 times and finally gets it done. So Alfredo forcing the issue on the 20, but makes the pass stick at last to get up to 6. Here comes Cabot off on the grass a little bit, working their way towards the very tricky, very tough turn 5. We look on board with Brad Perez as Adam Cabot's going to go wide over in turn 5 and just about stuff it in the fence. He's down off into the side a little bit. Alfredo is as well. Tons of track position loss for Adam Cabot, who will slide all the way back to the 15th position before he gets back on the racing surface.
That was tough for him now because he's been in the lead, in control of this race this entire time throughout this event. And now he's going to be mired back in traffic, still having to work as this top 4 have been really aggressive for position. And even more so, Will Rogers in the 65 on the outside of the carousel to Anders Krohn.
That's a place to try and make that pass happen. He's going to stay just off the quarter panel. He turns Anders Krohn. Will Rogers gets into the rear quarter panel of Anders Krohn and sends him around right before they hit the back straightaway of this track right at the kink. Will Rogers goes off as well. He nearly gets into trouble there. Calamity for the race lead, and Brad Perez comes out of all of that as your new race leader.
What a better place to be in than if you're that 30 of Brad Perez. Got around TJ Majors. You saw they both made door-to-door contact to the entrance of the carousel, but this was the spotlight moment. The 65 trying to make a move on the outside of the carousel, trying to make the space. You see Crone just trying to pinch it a little bit, and then the 65 barely gets into Crone and spins him around. Both of them go straight for the guardrail and or the tire barrier, and a big hit for the 65 machine. And so unfortunate as they both were so contentious for the front two positions, and now that leaves Perez, Majors, and Josh Balicki in the catbird seats at the moment.
That's the second time that Will Rogers has been involved in an incident from the race lead on a road course in as many road events in Monday Night Racing Season 3. There's a story that will be told there, and I think there'll probably be a few different viewpoints on that as we go back to David Schildhouse and Anthony Alfredo. Justin Prince, I want to go back down to you because you made the point over the break that you thought that David had said that there may be fuel issues not only for his number 20, but for a lot of the drivers in this field.
Yeah, they were talking about what you guys were discussing a little bit earlier, where how tight it was on gas before the pit stops, before the competition caution. It's been talked about by some drivers where they were thinking about, do they end up topping off? Well, we've seen the example for some of them during the caution flag period. There's still confusion by many teams to know, are they going to still be able to make it? They're still discussing in Gary Sexton's camp in particular as well about if that camp can make it on gas. A lot of discussion from a lot of the teams and drivers to figure out the gas.
And you are effectively playing with two camps here. If you came down during the midway break and you got your car filled up, fueled up, you are hoping that you can make it to the end. If you're somebody like a TJ Majors, a Josh Balicki, a Matt Stolnick, you looked at it, you said, you know what, there's no way I'm going to make it. I may as well just pit in the middle of this second stint, the final half of the race, and hope that everybody else has to come down for a splash. If they do that and I get my fuel, then I end up coming out on top of all that and pass them all while they're on pit road for service.
That's a good point there, James, but also you're fighting against time, right? We talked about the way pit strategy unfolds last Monday night at Gateway. We had that same exact conversation about where drivers are going to make it, how the pit strategy was going to go around. The big difference there was that race was under laps. It was counted as a lapped race, not a timed race. So they're fighting against laps, and they kind of can get a more accurate representation of what lap they can go down pit road and how long they can go. But on the road course, you have the time here. So of course you still have the window of the laps, but you also have to make sure that how much time you have left will be enough on fuel or on tires, what have you. Whatever service you get is going to last you to the end of this race. So you have to play with the timer and the clock a little bit here instead of more so the amount of laps you do on the racetrack. As I believe one driver went off, and that was Joshua Balicki. He went right for the barriers in turn one, similar to what we saw with Gabe Wood. Unfortunately, he is stopped at the exit of the racetrack right now, trying to merge back on safely.
That's a tough break for Josh Balicki, who ended up in deep trouble there. We know the Wisconsin native was looking for a big night tonight. This is a huge race weekend for him. He managed to try and get on the binders, and yeah, just never did quite get stopped the way he needed it to. Tried to connect it and correct it, but just ended up in the barriers over by turn two. So Balicki down the running order. Figure he'll probably come down pit road and get his car serviced as soon as he can. He was on the two-stop strategy, so he needed to come down pit road anyway. And I wonder if he's been waiting to use his fast repair until that point, but that certainly will not help his case.
Yeah, it certainly won't. And for many drivers there, I think even the fast repair and just trying to get all the situation on pit road, it's just a big play on the brain on what's going to happen, how you're going to do it, where you're going to end up, where are the other drivers in this, what are the other drivers going to do, and it's just a big test of skill and strategies. You right now watch TJ Cummings. We've talked about him so many times on his move down through the field, his move up, and now he's making that move back up to the front of this field. He's moved himself to P5, and he's been right here on the tail of David Schildhouse, and he's been just trying to get around him every single lap. He hasn't been able to find the space just yet, nor the momentum. He was also working with Anthony Alfredo at the time, but he definitely is letting David Schildhouse know that he's there, he's fast, and he wants to get by for position.
DJ Cummings absolutely is going to win the award for passing points this evening. He's gotten around more cars still than anybody else, and I think that hasn't changed since we talked to him as our Bryant Shock Technologies in-race reporter. But impressive, I think, this run has been from him, especially given how it started, got to Anders Krohn early and just made it really, really tough. But he's gained 14 spots over the course of this race alone after giving up all of that and then some via incidents on track, via mistakes. It's been a yo-yo kind of race for DJ Cummings, but he said it himself. Wanted to come out of here with a good points tonight more than anything else. So I think he'd like to get around David Schulthouse, get the extra spot. Certainly won't hurt, but I don't think he'd complain per se if he ends up in 5th. As we get a good look here at Ford Martin just a little bit further back. This is 13th, 14th, 15th. This is where Anders Krohn landed after his incident with Will Rogers, and now it's Gabe Wood, who has a cleaner race car. Only the one incident for Gabe Wood going through turn 6, but you can look at this mess and see how wild it is with Stolnick and Green and Krohn and Wood and Martin. That's a quintet off into turn 5.
I don't think at this part of the course, James, you want to be like this as Gabe Wood goes all the way to the outside, hopped on the brakes 3 wide. He makes that pass on Jeff Green and almost makes it, but he gets into Stolnick, and they both go around. Wood hard into the barrier, collecting Jeff Green as well. Oh, we knew it wasn't going to work as a big pack going into that hard braking zone. Wood tried to completely send it. He had it working for a moment on the top side of that corner, but then just trying to merge back before the grass comes up. He gets into the 41, and then Jeff Green, I think, goes around all by himself. It's so unfortunate as they were trying to make work for position here, and barely escaping is Anders Krohn and Ford Martin.
You're going to get a great shot of this from Ford Martin's on board. You can see what Gabe Wood was trying to do. He was trying to make it 3 on the exit at turn 5. It looked like he might be okay, but then just got on the brakes a little bit too hard and it threw off his corner exit. He tried to get back onto the racing surface, off the curbs, went right into Matt Stolnick. Nothing that Stolnick could have done. Jeff Green gets loose on corner exit, spins himself out. You see everybody else jump around and get a few more positions. So Ford Martin and Josh Balicki and Max Kennedy and company, the beneficiaries of that incident.
Yeah, definitely are going to get in that track position. I think Anders Krohn kind of had a heart-stopping moment. He's been up front all race long, gets put in that position, and then finally able to get by. But I think we got some other news. Anthony Alfredo has hit pit road, so I guess for the strategy part, James, we're already diving straight into it. As you see the 38 going to make the stop for the final time tonight.
Alfredo comes in for service. Justin Prince, tell us more.
And he was saying on the radio how he thought he should have came a lap earlier, in part for that fast repair, in part because he started making major mistakes in the midst of the battle for position. He was among. So now this is to be able to get to the end. Some drivers are talking about 1.3 gallons on their radios right now, or 0.13 to be able to make it. Right now, some of them are talking about potentially saving that gas, James. Scary sexism on the drivers, potentially going to try to save it.
And that sounds like a very insignificant margin, but remember, you have a hill that you have to go up to get to the start-finish line. You're going to need some gas to get up that. It's not like you could run out in the final corner and coast. You'll need a little bit of power to get up the hill, so fuel saving in that sense could become incredibly critical as we take a look at DJ Cummings and David Schulthouse as Schulthouse goes off the racetrack over the exit of turn 6.
Yeah, I had a small mistake. You saw Adam Cabot in the 17. He went by. That was per P4. But that's such an interesting point here, James. How do you even save fuel at a track like Road America with the uphill sections, with the elevation, with the way these corners are, and how much speed you kind of have to carry through them to be competitive lap time-wise? Where do you find spaces to push in that clutch and save a little bit of gas? Do you kind of sacrifice the speed on the straights by going not 100% on the throttle? Do you push in the clutch maybe through the carousel where maybe you're off throttle and off brake a little bit? Where do you find places to save and or waste gas? That's going to be a big question if these guys elect to try and push it all the way to the end. There's 14 minutes left. That means there's still a very long way around this racetrack, a couple of laps to go. And here at Road America, that's 4 miles you have to get through. If you need to save gas, it needs to be a very big effort if you even want to have a shot at making the checkered flag tonight. As two drivers got into contact, that was Gary Sexton and James Bigford at turn 14.
And that group around and in, you wonder now whether or not your race leader Brad Perez has got enough. He came in the lap before Sexton and Bickford did. And if Sexton's one of the ones talking about struggling to being able to make it to the end, and it be maybe a tenth of a gallon short that he stands at the moment, you would think then there's just about no way Brad Perez can make it, as you hear the clutch come in on the 13 machine. So that's part of the answer. You can also short shift on straights if you want. You'll burn your lap times up and you'll bleed seconds away. But if you short shift, you run the engine at lower RPMs, you're not going to burn as much fuel. So it's not totally impossible, but certainly a thought that you may want to try, especially if you can avoid coming down pit road one more time. Or you can be like Anthony Alfredo, who's used a faster pair, who's come down pit road, and whose MO is just going to be to go full send pretty much the final 12 minutes and change of this race.
Yeah, I think that's going to make things very interesting for guys like Alfredo, because he's back in P11. He's currently a couple seconds off of the race leader, actually 39 seconds, in fact, from your race leader at the moment. So now it's going to be a game of how hard can he push versus can he get by everybody else in time, and the distance is just going to make things even more complicated on his end. I think this kind of reminds me, James, of what we saw Sunday afternoon, the Pocono race, where it went down to fuel mileage. Some guys were on some strategy. They had to save dramatically near the end of this race. Meanwhile, drivers like Kevin Harvick and I think Brad Keselowski were able to push it all the way to the end. I think Alfredo is in that Kevin Harvick position. Meanwhile, everybody else is on the Kyle Busch, and everybody else strategy is Adam Cabot got a bit of the gravel. He's going to lose that spot to DJ Cummings for top 5.
So Cabot slides back. Cummings takes advantage and jumps up. Cabot, we just haven't seen him get the track position that he had the first half of this race. The Magic Man has been good, but maybe not there. You see him off on the bottom of your screen wide in the final corner. So there's a second, there's 2 seconds. That's a terrible place to go off, because you lose so much time to everybody else who has their motors wound up, who can blitz down this front straightaway. And DJ Cummings, who is no more than maybe 2 or 3 car lengths ahead of Cabot, is now clear of Cabot to the tune of about 4 seconds, as Cummings just a little drift through the corner and is now up to 3rd in this race.
He's had a miraculous job to come up through this field, James, and has done a masterful job of keeping his head high and being able to move through the field. We've seen our Bryant Shock Technology in-race reporter not have the luck when they're the in-race reporter, but DJ Cummings has been able to move through the field slowly but surely, even with some of the bad luck that has stricken him and the damage and all the incidents that's been around him. He's been able to pick all that back up, and with 10 minutes to go, he's in prime position to capture some decent points and keep himself well above that dreaded cutoff that you do not want to be near if you go to Chicagoland with the Xfinity cars next Monday night. So a great job by him. But I want to put out another driver, TJ Majors. We haven't talked about him too much because he's been kind of within the top 10. He's on, I believe, a 14-lap stint right now on fuel. So he's kind of in that situation as well, where he's going to be short on gas, I believe, a little bit all the way to the end. And with this play on fuel strategy and or track position, could make things more captivating for the two if he's able to pull this off as well.
And look who's fallen out of the top 13 as they run. Justin Malillo's now even with Gary Sexton there, and it would be tight between those two. We'd have to go to the rule book and see where the tiebreaker falls, but Malillo now out of the top 13. He's all the way down in 21st after running so well early in this race. He was up near the top 10, but certainly not there now. Other point to note on TJ Majors, he's on a 14-lap stint, so you figure that TJ will at some point have to come down for service. I don't think that 2-car can make it all the way to the end, but nevertheless, a solid run for Majors tonight, especially in the second half of this race.
Yeah, there's been many points throughout the season. I think I can recall some of the dirt races, James, where he's had consistent runs to the front, and then all of a sudden it kind of just gets ripped away from him, where he's all the way consistent. He's been aggressive. He moves up in position. He looks like he's got a good chance at the race lead and or very good position. Then all of a sudden the small mistake or something happens out of his control to send him out of contention. You run on board, or actually look for a battle right here. That was the 88 of Mike Clay and the 65 of Will Rogers just trying to slip by. A couple drivers near the rear of the field. Talk about Will Rogers, his incident with Anders Krohn earlier tonight with that damage. He's up to 13th right now, but definitely not where he anticipated to be with that incident, of course.
Nerves, fuel calculators burning up, and button mashing at the extreme going on atop these pit boxes to see if you can make it home as Jeff Green locks it down. He saved himself the trouble of completely spitting out there, but that was a dangerous moment not only for him, but for Gabe Wood, who was right behind him. Wood was ready to run straight to the back of the 8 car, had Green fully looped in around.
And he's got the same issue that a lot of other drivers have had tonight, James, is trying to put that throttle in. The car just gets around it. Very good job him to easily lock the brakes. He noticed immediately when the car was going to step out, lock the brakes, and it kind of set him in the other direction to the left. So he was able to drift up, and I believe he was able to merge through the traffic safely on the racetrack. You watch here, this is David Schildhouse and Adam Cabot. These are two drivers in the top 5, two very different scenarios. You have Schildhouse, very good in the point standings. You have Adam Cabot locked in with a win. And Indianapolis says one driver there, I believe that was the 27 of Michael Massey, rejoining the track surface, almost got into him. And I think right now, James, we're just looking at very separated battles. And then now in the final 8 minutes, we kind of have to play a waiting game as to who's going to pit, who's going to make it, who's going to end out on top, and how everything's going to unfold. I think it's probably the most anxious 7.5 minutes if you're all the drivers right now on track.
This is going to get very interesting. Anthony Alfredo leads the drivers who have come down in this stint. He and Josh Bilicki have both pitted in the second half of this race. They are good to go to the end. Everybody else, we're not totally certain. It's going to be close for a lot of these drivers as to whether or not they make it. So we'll keep our eyes on really about the whole top 10 as TJ Majors comes in now. Here comes the number 2 from P2 to get his splash of fuel to get to the end. The question is, where does he come back out onto the racetrack? But TJ Majors in from second to make what should be his last pit stop of this Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge.
Yeah, this is going to be the final stop. He just has to keep this one consistent, keep this one solid, maybe burn the faster pair. I don't believe TJ Majors has burned it. He has not, but he does not have that much damage to warning at this point. Actually, he does burn it off, but he's going to get this service, and now he's going to get a quick splash. He's out off of pit road and now going to rejoin to the track surface. He's going to end up probably in the latter half of the top 10, if not a bit out of it, as now here comes Anthony Alfredo by, and this is going to put TJ Majors in the same situation as Alfredo and a handful of others. It's just all about the distance, James. I think that's the biggest concern if you're these drivers right now.
Also, no, can tell you in the affirmative that Brad Perez is fuel saving. I just heard him on the clutch all the way through the braking zone down to turn 5, which is a humongous run down into the tightest corner on the racetrack, the one that you see the 30 machine coming through, actually rather just behind this one up to the hurry downs now. But there is clutching in the extreme going on with Brad Perez. You figure he's going to try and make it, and you would think Cummings would as well. Adam Cabot is about 7 seconds back of your race leader and has been running faster lap times. He was about 3 seconds faster than Perez, who was fuel saving. So Cabot may be thinking he's all right, he's good to go, and everybody else who pitted right at that midway point during the yellow maybe a little bit worried about whether or not they can make it.
They probably are worried about it, and I figure right now, James, to the point where you have to kind of really calculate when you can push and when you can, because if you're in a situation where you're so tight on fuel, you can misjudge it by accident, then go, okay, here's my full send, I've saved enough, I'm just going to go 100%, I'm just going to keep going like I have been all race long, all the way to the end. Then all of a sudden, you're coming out of the final corners, your car's sputtering and it's out of gas. So you really have to find that sweet spot in the middle. And for many of these drivers saving, like the leader, Brad Perez, he really has to calculate either how much he's saving, how much he's losing time, but also when he needs to push to keep himself in the race lead and hold on to the final 5 minutes. That's just going to be the biggest challenge for Brad Perez, and even more so the fact that drivers in front of him, lap cars, have been off track everywhere across the circuit, and he's been trying to get around. It's been a tough run for Brad Perez. He just has to keep cooling on for 5 more minutes.
Under 5 minutes to go as you look at this pack with Josh Bilicki, Gabe Wood, Will Rogers, Max Kedden. This is 11th, 12th, and 13th and 14th. Bilicki and Rogers should be set to go to the end. Wood and Kennan came down under the yellow. We don't know whether or not they can make it. So we're trying to keep a track of all the fuel strategy as much as you are at home, because it's so varied across this field. You look at some of the numbers of the stints here. You see the 1, 12, 1, 5, 15, 2, 7, 10. They are all over the place on pit strategy in a way that I've not seen in an M&R race for quite some time.
I think that's a part of the way that Road America kind of plays these races. You can either see it as a race where you don't have to worry about fuel, and it's more just about the driver's skill around the racetrack. We see many drivers with mistakes. We've seen drivers play this track very cleanly. But then now, you blow wide open the pit strategy, especially with that competition yellow at the midway point of this race. That completely shaked everything up, because then there's drivers thinking that their strategy is the way to go, and then thinking that the other guys, that they don't know what they're doing, they're probably on the wrong strategy, they're going to run out. Or you can predict that they're going to be on the same strategy as you, and then all of a sudden they make that quick right, they make that quick direction change, they're on a different strategy, they're on a different way to the end of this race. So now it's just going to be about when you can go and how you can do it at this point as you run on board with DJ Cummings.
DJ Cummings there hanging out at the very end of this as one car goes off there in the corner by Canada corner. You get a good look at Matt Stolnick coming up the hill, but wild times as we try and figure out who goes where at the end of this.
And there's Ron Capps, had a rough night and almost got into Shieldhouse as he was trying to merge back on. That's been the scariest moment, I think, if you're anybody on the lead lap, just watching out for all the lap cars if they have a mistake right in front of you when they're trying to join the racetrack cleanly. As you see Perez trying to make his way through the forced corner. And now, James, it's the final 2 minutes. So now you either decide to continue saving or try to push it to the end. I figure Brad Perez, his gap is enough where he can keep saving. But at this point, everything's going to start to crunch in. Everything's starting to get smaller. And it's going to be, in a way, a lot tougher for everybody as Perez tries to hold on for his first M&R victory.
He's trying to hang on. You see this thing crawling by comparison down the straight. There's Adam Cabot, who just popped into the picture there. It's an 8-second lead for the moment, but just how much is that going to buy you with the next few laps or so? Might be enough here, you would think. Here's your lap time of 1:08, so this should be 2 to go at this point. It's about 2:10 to get a lap done at Road America, so Perez should get the white flag next time by.
He definitely should, and that's going to be the worst last lap of his life if he can't get this right. He's trying to play the revs. I'm trying to hear his cockpit, how he's playing the downshifts. You do not want to be high up in the revs because that's going to waste you a little more gas. Try to play it safe through the carousel, maintain some of that momentum while also just being very careful on the transmission and where you put the throttle down. It's going to be the final time around Road America. 4 miles left. That's a long way, especially when you're in fuel conservation mode.
Lap and a half to go for Brad Perez. If he can make it, this will be a big-time fuel conservation run at the end and a big win for him, but he's got to execute on this last lap. Does he have enough fuel? And if he runs out, can anybody else take advantage of the fact that he doesn't have fuel as he nearly lost it there in Canada Corner? That was close.
It was very close, and there's 10 seconds between himself, about 9.3 now, between Perez and Cabot. So if Brad Perez does waste all of his fuel and does run out as he comes across to the white flag, that means that Adam Cabot has all the length in the world of this racetrack to easily get by him and take this win away. This may be the final time for Brad Perez.
Brad Perez to get the white flag here. One more lap in the Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge, and it's a fuel save run for the ages. Listen to how long he got on the clutch and then finally decided to gas it up. So I guess this is the moment where you decide to go, and if you have enough fuel or not, it's the last lap. You have to give it everything if you're the man behind the 30 car.
You definitely have, and you see him right there. He had a lot of opportunities to get by the lap car of Justin Malillo, but he's saving so much to the point where he doesn't need to get by, and a couple drivers I'm hearing have already lost all the fuel pressure, that being Adam Cabot, TJ Cummings out of fuel as they head for pit road.
Cabot is out, Cummings is out, James Bickford up to third, David Shieldhouse now to second. They're the ones who have a shot to go after this. If they run out, Gary Sexton would be next in line. Here comes TJ Majors up in the standings. Anthony Alfredo, who pitted earlier, has the opportunity to jump up and clear some of these drivers as Cabot is sputtering and struggling and trying to get enough fuel just to make the end of this.
He is trying right now, but there's still so many corners left in this race. It's now 16 and a half seconds between David Shieldhouse and Brad Perez, and they're both on that concern of whether they can make it all the way to the end and the start finish line. Brad's still in that concern as he tries to get by Justin Malillo, and now everybody's going to cycle through. We're going to find out, James, who runs out, who stays clear of all of this.
How much does Brad Perez have left in the tank? It really is just Justin Malillo ahead of him. Not much else on the racetrack in front of that 30 machine between where his car is and where the finish line is. So he just has to make it. That's it. He's got a 15-second lead on David Shieldhouse. And again, big time break there from Perez. He's not even going to try and test getting around Malillo.
And I heard it as he was going through the kink for the final time in this race, just letting off and making sure it just slides easily without any fuel pressure all the way to the end. Final time up the hill and final time through turn 14. Does Perez have enough? We'll find out if he can get this win.
All he has to do is make the charge up the hill, and it will be Brad Perez's night in Monday Night Racing. Does he have enough fuel to get up over the bump? Yes, he does. Give the Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge to Brad Perez out of Hollywood, Florida, his first win in Monday Night Racing.
What a job by Perez to save enough fuel, keep his car collected. David Schildhaus is going to come across the line second. He spun it in the final few corners, but he had enough time to gather it back up and come back to P2. How about James Bigford? We saw him with damage earlier tonight, some issues. He's moved up to third at the start-finish line.
A wild night of racing. We saw so many folks fall out at the end. TJ Majors ends up in trouble at the end of all this. DJ Cummings is going to make it back home in 6th. Anthony Alfredo up the hill. He'll get 7th. Josh Slate going to try and beat Will Rogers. We're going to have a drag race to the line as Rogers gets to the inside, Slate to the outside. Will Rogers on the grass to make it through and get around Josh Slate to take 8th. A great race there at the end, as Slate may or may not have run out of fuel at the very end of it, but tough battle there between those two, and a wild finish to this Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge.
I guess in any case, with the separation we had, there are still those packs. A fantastic run there by Rogers to get by Slate. There's Justin Melillo in the 53 machine. He's going to ultimately, I believe, end up in P18 as he's just trying to get back to the start-finish line. At this point, the checkered flag is waved, so the race is over, but you just got to make sure you get there. As you look at the points, I think that's going to be even more nerve-wracking for him as he comes across the line at a tiebreaker with Gary Sexton for the final spot in the playoffs.
Nail biter in Chicago, to say the least. We'll see if anybody else goes off of the racetrack ahead of Justin Melillo. It's the only way he could gain spots at this point, but Mike Clay is the next car ahead of him. Clay makes it around the final corner. All he has to do is make it up the hill. He'll lock down 17, and that will lock Melillo into an 18th place finish. And more importantly, a dead heat with Gary Sexton on points for the final spot in the playoffs, entering the final race of the regular season at Chicagoland. I take that as a pretty entertaining setup for those of us watching from afar. It'll be hair-raising for both Melillo and Sexton, but big work to do for both of them to make sure they get into the playoffs in the Windy City. At this point, though, time to run you through the full field rundown and tell you where your favorite driver finished. It's Brad Perez who takes the victory this evening over David Schildhaus. James Bigford came home 3rd. Gary Sexton 4th. Adam Cabot was P5. 6th went to DJ Cummings. A lot of drivers running out of fuel right at the very end of this. Anthony Alfredo came down to pit for service. He was 7th. Will Rogers had to put in a big shift to recover from that contact with Anders Crony. Ends up 8th at the end of the night. Josh Slate, top 10 for him. He'll take that. P9 for him. And TJ Majors, another one who had to pit towards the end to make sure he made it. He was 10th.
Hometown P11 for Joshua Balicki. That's where he stands. Gabriel Wood after starting on the front row. Some incidents, but he ends up in P12. Max Kennan ends up at the line P13. For Martin in 14th. 15th will belong to former race leader at one point, Anders Krone. That incident kind of set him back the entire race. Matt Stallneck will be 16th at the line with Mike Clay in the 88 to 17th. 18th to Justin Melillo, who's going to have a time at Chicagoland next week to try and get to the Monday Night Racing Season 3 playoffs. Robbie Lyons finishes the 19 car in 19th spot, and Jeff Green returning to the series. He'll be one lap down in the top 20.
Brandon Brown was 21st this evening. 22nd went to Ron Capps. Steve Affont was 23rd. He needed more after his playoff hopes maybe, just maybe, come to an end tonight. It's not impossible. It'll be tough at Chicagoland for him next week. Michael Massey was 24th. Drew Welker finished in the 25th position. 26th went to Garrett Miller. Noah Lewis was 27th this evening. 28th went to Paul Sutton. Mark Ramillis, Dylan Welch completing the 30-car field that made up this Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge. And we now turn our attention from the full field rundown to the man in victory lane for the first time in his Monday Night Racing career. And Brad, you came on Twitter before the race and said, watch me disappoint myself if I don't win. So is it more of a relief? Is it excitement? Where's your head at now that you're an M&R winner?
That race was, yeah. I kind of was gifted this. I mean, we had really good pace. I think honestly we had a shot to win in general, but thanks to the 47 taking out Will there, I think that just basically kind of handed it to me. So all I had to do was save some fuel. But I mean, honestly, I'm hyped. Like I circled this one. I was like, if I don't win this race, like I said, I was like, this is just a disappointment. So I'm glad I won. Glad y'all had me. It was absolutely tough because I'm out here thinking, oh man, yeah, I'm gonna win. Like, yeah, no problem. But no, this was earned for sure. It's really difficult racing against these guys sometimes, and there's a lot of variables that you can't control.
We had a lot of people talking about fuel saving, even as soon as we got to the midway caution. Were you aware of how tight it was, and how hard were you fuel saving to get to the end?
I was fuel saving on the pace laps. I knew exactly how I was going to do this because track position here is big because, I mean, I'm keeping it honest with you guys. There's a couple squirrels in this league, so you got to know to put yourself in the right position to not get screwed over by someone else's bad day. So made sure I stayed with the competitive group, had enough of a delta so that if I pit, I could stay in a good position when the caution came out. And then when the caution came out, I knew that had to pit, save, and throughout the whole last run, no matter where I was on track, if I saved enough, I knew I was going to be able to win the race. So you had to really know what you were doing from the drop of the green. It was not a fly-by-night, pick a strategy out of the hat type race.
It was not Willie B and Rudy Fugle at Pocono this weekend, that's for sure. So maybe a better question, and the fun one that I get to ask, since there's a little bit more insider info here than usual. We got a victory song lined up that you're going to go play for yourself and or for everybody else now that you got the dub? It could go I know you, and it could go anywhere, so that's why I asked.
Yeah, it's definitely it's 60 Seconds by Unity TX.
All right, you heard it from the man himself. 60 Seconds by Unity TX is Brad Press's first victory song of choice. Probably not the last, I have a hunch. But Brad, congratulations on your first win and MNR. Thanks for the time, and we'll see you in Chicagoland next Monday night.
For sure, thank you. Give me a minute.
He gained more than just a minute on the fuel save, Kenneth Bueno. It's Brad Perez who gets the victory tonight in MNR. P2 this evening was David Schildhouse, and he is with Kenneth Bueno.
Here with David Schildhouse, P2 at the end of it all. And this race, ultimately, I think for everybody on the communications, David, was about how much fuel you can carry and whether you can make it to the end of this race. A lot of drivers had those concerns. How big was your concern with the fuel strategy coming to the final stretch of this event?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's nice to be here. How about that? I said this was going to be my worst race of the regular season. I come out of this thing P2. Are you kidding me? But fuel was definitely a concern. I was talking about it during the halfway yellow that I wasn't sure we were going to be able to make it at full push. I just didn't feel confident. I considered coming down pit road, coming to take the one to go before we restarted, just to give myself a little bit extra peace of mind. But I didn't really want to be back there that far back without track position. It's just too hard to try and pass everybody. So I drove hard for a while, and then with about 8 minutes or so, 9 minutes left in this race, I kind of just started doing calculations in my big brainy head, and it wasn't adding up. It just wasn't adding up. So I started max saving as hard as I could. I was clutching all the way down the front straightaway as soon as I could, clutching all the way down to turn 5 as soon as I could, short shifting everywhere I could just to save aggressively, because I was battling with DJ and Adam, and we were all racing each other so hard and making all these mistakes. I kind of realized that if they keep doing that, I'm just going to pass them anyways because I'm going to have more fuel. So I backed off, went to max fuel save mode, and it worked out.
Certainly this race was about, like you said, the big brain motives, big brain strategies going to the end of this race. But a lot of this race is also about physicality. You walk into this race with a brand new NASCAR Next Gen machine at a track like Road America, where they'll visit in real life, most likely in 2022. Were there any notable challenges you kind of picked up from driving this brand new Chevrolet Camaro on this track, knowing how tough this track is and how interesting these new Next Gen cars are?
Yeah, Road America is, it's a challenging track on its own. It's 4 miles, and there's plenty of opportunities to get it wrong. You throw into the mix something that doesn't necessarily like stopping, going, or turning, and that makes an already complicated situation just a little bit more special. So it was a challenge from start to finish. I'd say the challenge really started at about the flag stand, and it really ended when you got back to the flag stand. So that's how I would describe the challenge here. But I told myself in the pre-race, coming to the grid, and I told chat, I said, there's 3 groups of people coming into tonight. The fast guys who are probably going to drive themselves off the track. Guys like me who their singular goal is just to keep it on the track every lap and not take myself out of this thing. And then the third group are guys that are going to struggle no matter what pace they go. And I think we saw all 3 of those groups. I mostly fit into the second one. I made my fair share of mistakes, but I was able to live and talk about it.
Keeping it in one piece, the motive going into tonight, saw it on Twitter, and of course the motive executed to the fullest extent. David, now coming into the final race of the season, you've got all these points. You've been riding a high off a lot of top 5, top 3 finishes. You certainly get this one here tonight, and this should cement you easily into the top 13. Where do we see the motive of the children go for the playoffs in Monday Night Racing Season 3?
It starts next week. Xfinity Cars at Chicagoland, if I'm not mistaken, and we're going to go in there and we're going to give them hell. I mean, it's win or bust. If we're locked in, then there's nothing else to race for at that point. And it's a combination that I certainly have plenty of experience with and a high degree of confidence with. So we'll go in there and we'll make their lives miserable, whoever shows up. Try and steal a win there, build some extra momentum for the playoffs, and then it's like single elimination in my mind. Even though the rounds are 2 races each, if you have one bad race, that's pretty much the end of it. So I go into each race like that's the last one for the playoffs if I don't execute. So I just got to keep executing. I'm going to Matt Kenseth my way to this championship if I have to. It's good to be around for a full season. Good to see what I can do after showing up halfway through the year last year. And I may not beat all these guys, but damn it, I'm around there at the end when it counts, and when it pays big points, I'm showing up to the window with a big bag to collect.
Definitely showing up. A big salute to the ones on stream, but a great night here at Road America nonetheless. David, congratulations on the P2 finish here from Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, and wishing you the best of luck moving forward to the playoffs, and of course next Monday night at the Chicagoland Speedway.
Thank you. Hey, I got to ask real quick. You didn't happen to have a camera on me during my last couple of corners there, did you?
I'm not exactly sure. I don't think we did. No.
Okay, let's keep it. We don't have to talk about how I just gave me P2 to a very deserving James Bigford there. The Gamer Advantage Chevy Camaro was outstanding. Big thank you to Gamer Advantage. Everybody watching on twitch.tv/Shieldhouse, all the children and everybody who tunes in and supports this amazing league. Thank you so much. We will see you next week.
There it is. Sign off by David Shieldhouse. Comes home P2, James, at the end of it all from Road America.
Much love to the children indeed. As we turn our attention to James Bigford, who came home P3. And James, I struggle to think of quieter runs to a podium in this league in this season, where you, I think, just survived the madness and nailed the fuel strategy as best you could. So how hard was it, especially in the second half, to make sure that you were all right enough to get to the end?
Oh, don't get me wrong. I don't belong here at all. We were terrible in practice. Usually we were pretty fast at all the other tracks, but yeah, with the equipment that I have here, not the most ideal for road course. And honestly, I have to give a shout out to Reed Wilson, who was on top of the box for me tonight. He made the genius call to pit at 1 to green instead of 2 to green, so we really didn't have to save all that much when it came down to it. So we came across the line, still had an extra lap of fuel, and we just snuck our way right here in the top 3.
So it took reading, it took a little bit of calculating and maybe a little bit of reading, I suppose, to make it work. Should I see myself out now?
Oh, well, Reed was able to read the situation, and he gave us the best outcome, and we put it here in top 3. I at the last lap, I was just kind of riding, just trying to keep it on track, keep it clean, and that's kind of how we went into this race. It's just all survival. And he's like, you might win this race, and I'm like, what do you mean I'll win this race? So I started seeing the situation, and here we are.
So you make it here. It's your best finish of the season, but more importantly, to establish momentum heading into the playoffs and to get a really good run in. I know for you, where it hasn't necessarily been the easiest of seasons. You've been caught up in other people's incidents a lot, it seems like, but to get one like this at this time, how big is that for you? How big is that for, I guess, you and Reed and just your whole setup going into these playoffs?
Yeah, in terms of points, I don't know where we're at. I was looking at it. I took a look and I didn't realize I was only 30 points out because I felt like we've been just involved in so many other incidents throughout the season so far. But I don't know how it stands now, if we can get in on points or if we still need to win at Chicagoland. But I can tell you this. Been putting the laps in, and I'm running another series on Wednesday nights for the Xfinity cars. So I think we have a pretty good shot there.
So the Xfinity cars at Chicagoland, do you have a sense of what to expect? And does the fact that it is the regular season finale change the way you think it's going to play out compared to a regular Chicagoland race?
Oh, I'm going in. I'm going to win the race. That's as simple as that, right?
Shot called. Bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how it goes. But James, congratulations on your podium finish. Thanks for the time this evening, and we look forward to seeing whether or not your prediction comes true in Chicago next week.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you never go in a race as a race car driver not expecting to win the race, right?
Winner's mentality. Always make sure you get the dubs. James Bickford, P3 this evening. And Kenneth Bueno, that was, as far as strategy goes, one of the wildest races I think we've seen in a long time in MNR. Not every day that you've got people all over the map on fuel strategy, but when you're working with smaller fuel tanks, as we were tonight, that's the game that you're playing. That's how things go.
It certainly was, and that was quite possibly the most captivating 20 or so minutes that we've seen in Monday Night Racing. I was expecting a kind of race like this when we took the Mazda Miatas to Lime Rock, because that race was around the same length. We had the same kind of road course mentality, that kind of approach, but tonight was just a whole different beast, and I think one that made the run for the championship a lot at least more interesting, because now we get to thrust ourselves into the final regular season race, James, where we mentioned at the finish, guys like Justin Malillo, Gary Sexton right at the tiebreaker, guys within margins so small you can barely see it from the naked eye in the point standings, and they're gonna have to execute at Chicagoland. Guys already locked in the playoffs, they won't have to worry, but we're going to see guys backs against the wall and how they're able to arise from that pressure. I think that's going to make for a fantastic run at a very bumpy track, very fun track with a car so fun to drive on the surface.
Especially the Xfinity Series car, when you have to wait to get on the throttle at Chicagoland, you can spin yourself out, especially if you're on old tires. The other thing that I look at entering next week is that because people like Shane Van Gisbergen have been taking up all the wins, taking up all the bonus points, you've got a lot of drivers that have a shot to win their way in. You could be, somebody who's missed a few weeks because he's been busy, like a Devin Hendry. If you go out and you win next week, you go from 20th all the way into the playoffs outright. That's the way things set up here. So long as you made the minimum amount of starts, you still have a chance to make it. That means that it's not necessarily just the 8 or 9 drivers that are currently sitting in on points that have a shot. It's everybody that's made starts all year long. So this race coming up in Chicago next Monday night, maybe even more so than any other race we'll see the rest of the year, could be a gigantic free-for-all with all sorts of wackiness that plays yet as we solidify the final 13 drivers that are going to make the Season 3 Monday Night Racing playoffs next week. 7:45 p.m. start time right here on the Podium Esports Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Podium2, as well as the Podium Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages. But that's not all we have this week coming up. Plenty of events you'll want to stay tuned in on. Come watch the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series head to Road America for the first time. They make their debut tomorrow night. Pre-race at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on iRacing's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube channels before the eNASCAR International iRacing Series heads to Circuit of the Americas, featuring top drivers from the NASCAR Wheel and Euro Series, NASCAR Pit Series out of Canada, the NASCAR Peak Mexico Series, and some of the top drivers from NASCAR's Drive for Diversity program. That broadcast will start at 6 p.m. Eastern. You can watch it on the eNASCAR live portal at enascar.com/live. And talking about Monday Night Racing coming your way, the Xfinity Series working from Chicagoland to close out the regular season. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern Time start for the race broadcast, 7:45 for the pre-race show. You'll want to stay tuned to all of it. It will be wild, no question about it, at twitch.tv/Podium2, as well as the Podium Facebook, Podium YouTube, and the Monday Night Racing Twitter pages. You can retweet the broadcast of the race if you like. And then the eNASCAR Road to Pro Qualifying iRacing Series is coming your way next week from Knoxville Raceway in Knoxville, Iowa. First time they've ever gone to that fabled dirt track in Iowa. Our broadcast will begin at 9 p.m. Eastern on the Podium Esports Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Podium Esports. So much to look forward to over the course of the next week, but for now, just have to focus on the fact that Brad Perez did indeed get the bread and get his first Monday Night Racing victory in the Big Green Egg Next Gen Challenge at iRacing's Virtual Road America. Time to close out our broadcast on Podium Esports this evening. So for Ford Martin and Paul Sutton at Monday Night Racing, Cisco Scaramuza, Gary Sexton, John Theodore at Podium Esports, and our team on the broadcast this evening, our pre-race show host Taylor Burris, our pit reporter Justin Prince, our producer Ryan Bauer, and our camera builder Dougie Beard. For my colleague up in the booth, Kenneth Bueno, I'm James Pike, the voice of Podium Esports. Thank you so much for watching our broadcast of Monday Night Racing, and we look forward to seeing you for the regular season finale from the Windy City next Monday night.